Have you ever opened Blender and just stopped? Like time stood still and your eyes glazed over as you stared into the abyss that is Blender's interface? Well, that's how I felt at least. And if you found yourself in a similar position, I have some tips on how to overcome the overwhelming dread that can come with trying to learn how to use Blender. So first of all, let's be honest. Blender is intimidating, especially if you've never used animation software before. But count your lucky stars if you're starting with it the last few years, because my first experience with Blender was around 20 years ago. Believe me when I say the interface has come a long way. And I spent a long time using Blender on and off and never really succeeding with it until more recent years here. Part of that is due to the change of the interface, but the reason I spent about a decade and a half trying to use Blender on and off and never succeeding was because my approach to using it was all wrong. In the last few years, I've actually become more comfortable using Blender and even made some things that I've published online, but I look back and think how much further ahead I could be if I had learned this approach back then. So if you're still with me, here's what I've learned not to do when trying to learn Blender, so you don't give up. Number 1, everyone jumps in wanting to make the next Toy Story. No one starts Blender because they want to make a donut. Typically we see something that impresses us, whether it's a big studio produced animated movie, like I said, like Toy Story, or something someone put on YouTube, and we get excited about the idea that a tool that made that is actually available for anyone to use for free. While it is good to be ambitious, overreaching can set you up to fail miserably. If you open Blender ready to create an animated movie and you're confronted with this intimidating interface, you can easily feel discouraged. You don't know where to start, much less how to achieve the results you have in your mind. So you open YouTube and you start searching for tutorials. And nowadays there's plenty of people making tutorials of all skill levels, so you're much better off now than when I was when I first tried Blender. But even with these resources, there's so many layers to not just understanding how to use the software, but then to take that knowledge and apply it to the skills and disciplines required to create an animation. Big studios have departments and artists dedicated to a particular aspect of production. There are modelers, riggers, animators, people who do the materials and textures, people who do the lighting, the cinematography, etc. As a solo creator, you're not just tasked with learning the software itself, but then you've got to become familiar with a multitude of disciplines that you may or may not even be interested in, much less good at. So here's the first tip: take it slow. Learn the basics of the software and start creating simple things that interest you. Start with making still images. Create scenes and scenarios for a single image, and don't burden yourself with how you're gonna somehow bring it all to life with animation. Try creating simple models. Don't worry about how you're gonna texture them later or add materials or any of that stuff. Just focus on the modeling aspect. The mistakes you make will teach you more than if you try to get it all right from the beginning. Tackling less intimidating projects is the best way to learn the software, develop skills, and just become comfortable using Blender before you move on to more involved projects. Number 2, the interface is complicated, but you can simplify it. Blender has become much more user-friendly in the last several major updates, and there's no shortage of tutorials that will help you get a grip on effectively using the program, but there's still a few issues you might run into. For one, Blender doesn't really do much for you. You may think that something is a simple task that would have a couple of button presses and settings to adjust to achieve a desired result, but after tinkering with some things, you find that instead, Blender first requires you to earn a PhD in mathematics to understand what all this gobbledygook even means. Thankfully, there's a few solutions to this. Firstly, anytime you're unsure what something is, you can simply right-click on it and select Online Manual to be immediately taken to the related section of the Blender manual that explains that specific tool. There's also add-ons that simplify tasks within Blender, so instead of spending time researching how to set up the conditions for a common, seemingly basic task, you can install an add-on from someone who already did all the work and streamlined the process to be more akin to the experience you initially expected it to be. Finally, there's simply just narrowing your focus. If you're running into a wall when trying to do something in Blender and it's causing you to feel burnout or discouraged, try switching gears entirely. Try a different approach, or even an entirely different project for the time being that doesn't require you to deal with that issue. You can always come back to that idea when you feel more comfortable attacking it again. There's no reason to beat yourself up trying to figure something out if it's costing you your motivation. Number 3. Blender can do everything, but you don't have to. Like I mentioned previously, there are a number of disciplines that 3D animation encompasses, and feeling obligated to learn and become at least competent at them can be overwhelming, or even prohibitive if you feel like you're just not interested in or skilled at a particular aspect, such as modeling, for example, if your true passion is in animating. Fortunately, there's tools that can fill in those gaps. With sites like Sketchfab now transitioning to just Fab, you can download ready-made assets from materials and textures to character models to complete environments. There's also an add-on called Blender Kit, which has a free and paid version that allows you to download and import assets from within Blender itself. Some models on Sketchfab even come with animation applied, but you can also use a tool like Pixabay that has free-to-use motion captured animations that can be applied to humanoid rigs. It can even be used to automatically rig a model that you haven't already rigged. Now more than ever, there are options to help work around limitations of certain aspects of 3D animation production. But that doesn't mean you can't keep learning, of course. As a bit of a purist myself, I've always felt reluctant to use pre-made assets because I felt like I was skipping out on learning essential aspects of being self-sufficient in Blender. But that's not actually true at all. By using pre-made assets, you can allow yourself that breathing room to take your time mastering the things you're currently interested in. And beyond that, it can also give you references that you can reverse engineer to further your understanding of how things can be made in Blender. So what seems like a shortcut, at least that's how I saw it, can actually just be another way to develop your understanding of how things can be done. So those are my 3 big tips on how to conquer the fear and intimidation that may come with learning Blender for people if you're like myself. I hope that information was useful and helpful to you and maybe get you going in the right direction and approaching learning Blender in a healthier way than I spent a long time doing myself. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.